timeline, very specific timeline, I like to think of it in a few different ways. And the first way is, let's say on a timeline we start the drawing here and the drawing goes on till here. Depending on how much time we have to work on this, the first 20 to 40 minutes should all be here, which means points, angles, shapes, gesture of the face, and then it'll shift over to measurement. This area here, you want to think of one-dimensional and two-dimensional. So we're going to think of points, we're going to think of angles, and we're going to think of shapes. That's a bird. Once we have that laid down, this graphic two-dimensional, right, two-dimensional shape scene in the drawing for the first 40 minutes, let's say, or an hour if you need to. Then what you want to do is you want to slightly switch over gears. And the gear is going to be kind of stopping and appraising what you really have. And the way we do that is through measurement. And I recommend measuring not only the thirds of the face, which are more like getting started, you really get into setting up the face. But if you're drawing anything, you want to measure a half, so comparing the top half to the bottom half of your drawing. Another measurement to do is to measure a width versus a height. And if you're doing a very longer pose, what you could do is measure quarters. So for instance, you measure a half and a half, and you measure a quarter and a quarter. And you figure out where those points are, then you figure out how far off your drawing is in comparison to where those equally divided parts are. So one-dimensional and two-dimensional. You do some measurement here. I'll just do a little symbol for that. It's me measuring my halves, right? And then once that's set up, then all this time here is spent doing modeling, which is 3D, right? So that's like creating the illusion of the light source and creating the illusion of, oh, okay, this is all shadow, like we separated with the shape. This is all in light. After you've done your measurement, what you can do is you can start adding structural features. So, for instance, Bridgman and Loomis, authors like that or artists like that are terrific to look at for reference. And it's where you want to implement lots of your anatomy, anything that you know about the structure of the human body, production design, drawing, anything that's very like 3D, kind of putting building blocks together, you can use those to really tweak the drawing. First you're starting with your points, your angles, and your shape. Then you measure, spend a good 10 minutes just getting it so that it's right exactly where you want it to be, to your own standards. And you'll be glad you do this on every drawing. Because every time you measure and you find out that you were off by an inch or 2 inches, or that you always draw a nose a little bit too long, whatever you find, if you correct it, if you own it, if you take that mistake and you really figure it out, take the time, next drawing you do, you'll be off by a half an inch, a quarter of an inch, a few millimeters. It gets less and less and less because you're training your brain to take responsibility for those areas that you glossed over.